welcome to the final day of IMEX, and I'm joined by Luc Hendrickx, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Global Operations at the Kenners Group and formerly the organiser of the World Diabetes Congress. So, poacher turned gamekeeper. Luc, lovely to see you on the final day.
Good morning.
There was a fascinating gathering of IAPCO and IPCA yesterday for a little breakfast session, talking about the impact of the Pharma Code and the need increasingly for both the organisers, the PCOs, as well as the product or event owners to be compliant. What impact is this Pharma Code having?
Well, I think the impact of the Pharma Code is quite considerable. It's obviously something that, as a wave, came from the United States and moved into Europe, and very soon will move into Asia as well. I think what happened over the years is a kind of a pendulum that has switched from no compliance at all, was basically free for all, everybody could do whatever they liked. But what we've seen over the years is that the pendulum is swung to the other side. And so we're moving, or we moved into a strictness that actually a lot of partners in various sections of the industry felt to be a little bit unreasonable. So what we're seeing here is, of course, regulations that are being tightened, but sometimes also being made more reasonable. So what I can see in the near future, meaning maybe a year and a half, 2 years, is that the pendulum will sort of swing back to a middle ground. And I think all the different partners in the industry, the regulatory bodies, the industry, professional conference organizers and association management companies like the Kenners Group, for example, and also the clients will have to work very closely together to create that balance.
Do you think it's, whilst it's very restrictive, it's going to have a fairly heavy impact on attendances to congresses? We're hearing that the independent delegate, as opposed to the sponsored delegate, is swinging quite heavily in that direction.
Yeah, I think in the end you would get a better quality participant, because the participants would want to vote with their feet rather than and based on content. So I think content is really king, and particularly great content. So people will make their choices where to go. So, for example, if you're sponsored for, say, 5 meetings a year, and you've got the time to go, I mean, why shouldn't you? And very often it's in nice destinations, etc. But when you're no longer sponsored, and your hospital, if you're a doctor, sort of restricts your movement a little bit, and you have a choice of 1 or 2 meetings a year to be away from your patients, well, which meeting would you choose? The one that provides the best content. So we're very, as a Kenners Group, very content-driven. So it's all about knowledge worth sharing. So we actually applaud the Pharma Code and the compliance, because it just makes for better meetings.
What about the wider sort of healthcare community? Do you think the HCPs themselves have actually got the time to attend these events? Or the healthcare professionals, have they actually got the time, or particularly those in the public sector are under so much pressure now to deliver more for less, that actually it's eating into their time and their availability? Yes.
Indeed, I think a lot of healthcare professionals would want to have the time to travel all over the world and go to these magnificent congresses. But very often they are restricted in budget, for example, travel budget, hotel budget, but also the time to, again, as I said before, to be away from their patients. So what we will see, I think, very soon is more hybrid meetings, whereby there is a very clear combination of people who can afford, indeed, the money and the time to go, but people who really want to have the content and will simply participate in a hybrid fashion. So we very strongly see an evolution from what happened in the years 2009, 2010, where you had the financial crash. And so all of a sudden, meetings seemed to be the problem. The meeting budgets were being slashed. But of course, meetings were not the problem, were actually part of the solution. And so clever meeting organizers said, okay, what are we going to do about this? So rather than building on live meetings, in-person meetings, let's add a hybrid component to it. And so what we saw in 2011 and also particularly in 2012, sometime after the financial crash, is that hybrid meetings, rather than being the exception, are becoming the norm. So I think it's a very nice evolution.
We've heard a lot also this year about how associations are addressing the demand to change their business models, because if they're going to lose their traditional membership fees and their Congress revenues, particularly in light of the Pharma Code and the reduction in sponsorship, they're looking at technology and hybrid solutions and online content as a source of additional revenue. But that business model, whilst it looks good in a budget sheet, it seems to be very difficult to convert into reality.
Yeah, indeed. I think that reality is, a bit of a misleading term. So I think hybrid meetings is not about mimicking the real world. Okay. So at the beginning of these hybrid meetings, what organizers try to do is to mimic the real world by creating a kind of a second live experience. Okay. So you had your little avatar, you walk through an exhibition area, or you attended a session, and of course that didn't work, right? So we moved to another model, I think, and since there is no venue involved, there is no real networking involved. I mean, you can't drink beer through a television screen. It needed to be something else, and that something else is content. So for the pharmaceutical industry, for example, who sponsor these meetings, inappropriate venues no longer exist because the venue is cyberspace. And so indeed the business model is changing. A second point is that participants are perfectly prepared to pay a registration fee to attend a congress, but there is so much information out there on the web. I mean, there is no tradition of paying on the individual participant point of view for paying for content. If I Google anything medical, I mean, I don't have to pay anything to get that information. So making the individual participant pay as a kind of an online or hybrid participation fee, again, that would not work. On the other hand, to give the participant a code to access a real event or perhaps the webcast afterwards, and that's sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry or partners, that I think is a very valid business option.
Let's turn to the supply chain. There was a phrase that was used at the end of this particular session about, they called them room hunters.
About, sorry?
Room hunters. Room hunters.
Room hunters?
Yeah, people...
explain this to me.
Well, basically what happens is, word gets out that there's a congress coming to town, and the race is on to go and book all of the hotel rooms.
Ah, yes.
Okay, and then enjoy the massive markup. Now, there's already enough tension between the PCOs and the CVBs in terms of who owns the client and therefore who owns that channel.
Yes.
Then you have these room hunters that dig themselves into the middle, and basically the association delegates become hostage to fortune.
Yes, okay. Well, without naming any names, there's...
Oh, please do. Go on, make my day.
A number of companies, I would say particularly in the UK, who sort of scan the market for, indeed, what you say, congresses. And of course, they have absolutely no intention to put any participant in any room or book any registration for the congress.
They're a bit like ticket touts, aren't they?
Yeah, so their objective is just to be the middleman, okay, and then buy and sell to the highest bidder. It's not easy, of course. I haven't got the miracle answer to fight these gangsters, basically. So for them, it's a very viable business model, of course, but it sort of ruins the relationship between the different partners who do care about the Congress. In our case, the client or the association, the hotels as well, because there's sort of steal rooms from the organizer. They put the hotels a little bit on the spot, and it ruins the relationship with the client. So no, I haven't got the miracle answer.
Christian Muschleckner, who was one of the keynote speakers in this session, was pretty savage about this, because the damage it does inadvertently to the reputation of the destination is really significant.
Yeah. The only thing that I can perhaps suggest, and it's something that I've done in the past, so very often pharmaceutical companies, when they book hotel accommodation or they sponsor participants, they work through agencies. Now, as an organizer, you could ask, when you're approached by an agency, who do you work for? On whose behalf do you work? And you have an official mandate to work on behalf of pharmaceutical company X or Y. And then as an organizer, you can quickly check that.
Yeah.
So that is a way to sort of short-circuit
getting the hotels to play ball, though, is not easy. Let's
very
face
difficult.
It. You know,
very difficult.
They're commercial animals.
Yeah, so perhaps we should be at the table here with a few hoteliers to have a little brainstorm
maybe
about
this
that.
time next year we can have a guillotine here
yeah,
as well.
That's fantastic.
Good
And
idea.
I'll operate the cord.
Well, don't worry. I can assure you that Christian Muschleckner will definitely be pulling the cord.
Okay.
Luc, lovely to see you. Thanks for joining
Lovely to see you. Okay, thanks.
So
Bye-bye.
Luc Hendrickx from Kenner's Group. And if you'd like to find out more about Kenner's, they're one of the largest organisations, PCO organisations worldwide. Just go along to the web address, which is kenners.com. Thank you.